In the late 2000s, a huge trend of cooperative shooter games and modes were beginning to blossom within the gaming community. All in the same month of November 2008, we saw the release of Gears of War 2, Call of Duty World at War, and Left 4 Dead. Gears of War 2 had the successful Horde mode where you have to fight through 50 waves of enemies. World at War had the extremely popular Zombies mode that's still included in many current Call of Duty games. And Left 4 Dead established itself as a very well received FPS zombie franchise that is still played very much to this day. Microsoft and Bungie saw the success of these games and decided that a cooperative mode should be added into Halo, and thus, in September of 2009, Halo 3 ODST released with the cooperative mode, Firefight. This mode is featured again in different variations in Halo Reach, Halo 5 Guardians, and Halo Wars 2. And now, we are going to analyze the strengths and weaknesses of each mode to get to the conclusion of which Firefight mode is the best in the series. Halo 3 ODST's Firefight mode in its original release was very bare bones. There was no matchmaking and there was no customization for the mode. You could not choose what weapons you spawn with, which enemies were spawned, player traits, and enemy traits. All you could do was change the difficulty setting and the map, and that was about it. There weren't any separate modes of Firefight like Gruntpocalypse or Sniper Fight. It was just one Firefight mode. And honestly, it was still pretty fun. A match did not end until all lives were depleted from your team. There were 5 waves in a round, 3 rounds in a set, and sets were unlimited until all lives were lost. With each set, new skulls were activated to increase the difficulty. Everyone spawned with the Silence SMG and pistol, and there were power weapon pickups such as the rocket launcher, Spartan laser, and sniper rifle. There was more ammo for your starting weapons in the spawn area, but after you ran out, you had to wait until the next round for the ammo to replenish. This scarcity of ammo really made players be more mindful of how they use their pistol and SMG. The pistol was effective at taking headshots from afar, and the SMG was decent at draining shields or inflicting damage on multiple enemies quickly, at least until the tilt skull was activated. However, personally, most of the time I ditched the SMG for the plasma pistol for the classic noob combo. Once all ammo from spawn was depleted, players had to scavenge the battlefield for enemy weapons. Waves varied with enemy types. Enemy waves started off pretty standard with grunts, jackals, and brutes, but as players moved further into the match, they got more difficult enemies like hunters, sniper jackals, jetpack brutes, drones, or brute chieftains. On the larger maps, enemy vehicles would be dropped too, like ghosts, choppers, and wraiths. Players did have the option to hijack vehicles to give them an advantage. The main motivator for me though in Firefight back in 2009 was to do the Vidmaster Challenge Endure achievement, where you have to play on Heroic or higher and complete 4 sets in 4-player co-op. If you don't remember the Vidmaster Challenges, it was a group of achievements from Halo 3 ODST and Halo 3 that you had to get in order to get the super rare recon armor. So you know, I really wanted that recon armor badly, so I made sure to get a group of friends in order to get this achievement. My friends and I were able to do this on the map Lost Platoon. We thought having the Warthog and choppers as vehicles would be our best option since the Warthog turret and the chopper never ran out of ammo. We'd have someone always laser the wraiths as they drop in and then hop in vehicles to mop up the rest of the enemies. There was a lot of coordination between us whenever stronger enemies and vehicles were dropped in. Getting further into each set, the enemies became much more difficult due to the skulls that were activated. Tilt was activated in set 2 and it increased enemy resistances and weaknesses. Thus, human weapons were even less effective on Covenant shields. However, the plasma pistol became much more important to have. Famine activated in set 3 and it reduced the ammo of any enemy weapon by half. Mythic activated in set 4 and it doubled all enemy health. And then Tough Luck was always on, Catch was activated on every round 2 and 3, and then Black Eye, a skull where you can only regain stamina by meleeing an enemy, was activated in round 3 of a set only. That's why having a precision weapon like the pistol or the carbine along with the plasma pistol was absolutely necessary to get quick headshot kills from a distance. You could not risk dealing too much damage up close when your stamina could not recover, and that is why eventually we started using mostly vehicles in Lost Platoon since we would run out of pistol ammo. However, we were finally able to win it all and get the achievement. There were some very close calls when everyone would be dead except for one person, and that last man standing would have to try to survive into the next round for everyone to spawn back in. Overall, Firefight and Halo 3 ODST got punishingly more difficult the further you made it through the sets. It required a lot of communication and coordination among your teammates. At certain points, it does feel like you are pushed up against the wall trying to survive through the tough rounds. It was a game mode that I really enjoyed, and I was glad that Bungie introduced it into the series. Firefight made a return in 2010 in Halo Reach. This time it came with a complete overhaul of features. Matchmaking was introduced for Firefight, and fully customizable options such as player and enemy traits and wave spawns were available. Different kinds of modes were available such as Generator Defense, Sniper Fight, Gruntpocalypse, Rocket Fight, and many more. Most of them are just variations of the regular Firefight mode, just with specific weapons and enemies. However, Generator Defense was a bit different. Players had to defend 3 generators for a whole set in order to win. But that's the thing though, every Firefight mode in matchmaking only lasted one set. They never lasted forever, and thus the harder skulls would never be activated for the match to get too difficult. One could argue that yes, players can make their own Firefight mode that would last indefinitely until all lives are lost in a private match, but if Bungie had matchmaking this time, why not add a game mode that lasts forever until all lives are lost for players to match up with each other, which was missing from Halo 3 ODST. The main issue with Halo Reach Firefight was that it became too arcadey. It was mostly focused on scoring points and just competing against your teammates than actually trying to survive with them. The main reason it felt like that was because in Halo Reach you were a Spartan, and Halo 3 ODST you are an ODST. In Halo 3 ODST, you are not a genetically modified super soldier Spartan like in Halo Reach, so as an ODST, you have a lower jump height, weaker melee damage, no armor abilities, and no shields. While I do agree that you don't truly feel like an ODST, you just feel like a much weaker Spartan. Those differences though really make Halo Reach's Firefight much more easier than Halo 3 ODST's Firefight. Armor abilities do make a huge difference in Halo Reach, most notably sprinting and jetpacking. Players were able to get away from danger pretty easily after they lost their shields. Also, remember how players would run out of ammo for the pistol and SMG in Halo 3 ODST? Well, in Halo Reach, there are crates in every Firefight map where you could restock ammo automatically. It did not restock your power weapons, however, it would restock the weapons you spawn with, like the DMR, Magnum, grenade launcher, or shotgun. Because of this, you never had to be careful with your shots, and you did not have to worry about ever losing ammo for your main weapons, especially the DMR. The DMR is one of the main weapons you would be using since it is highly accurate for headshots. Maps were also much more open, leaving space for players to escape pretty easily from enemies. With the large scale of maps, Warthogs were available for many of the maps. With armor abilities, replenishable ammo, vehicles, and large open maps, it did make you feel less like you were being pinned up against the wall while fighting enemies. I'm not going to say it was entirely easy and it was a breeze for every single match I played. There were some matches where it was kind of difficult to win. This map in particular was pretty small compared to other Halo Reach maps, but was also really open, so players did not have that much cover since enemies would be dropped in from all around you. Sniper jackals with the focus rifle will keep spawning on the cliffs too, and if players would not take care of them quickly, the jackals would drain players' shields pretty fast. Halo Reach Firefight is just not that difficult. The one good thing is you can create a game mode tailored to how you want to play with the customization options. I just wish they did include an official playlist that lasted until you lost all lives and got rid of all ammo crates. Now that the servers for Halo 3 ODST and Halo Reach are down from the original Xbox 360, you can't play Firefight online anymore except for MCC. Master Chief Collection now offers customization options for the mode in Halo 3 ODST. So there are modes where players exclusively have weapons like sniper rifles, rockets, and brute shots. However, I don't see that much fun in some of these modes because you're basically invincible, especially with the brute shot only mode. I got this mode a few times while matchmaking and I just wanted it to end as fast as possible. The cool thing though is, on the map Lost Platoon, you can choose what vehicle spawns in. So instead of a Warthog, you can spawn in an anti-air wraith, a Hornet, or a Scorpion. While this would make the mode much easier, I would like to see how far I can make it on legendary difficulty with most of the skulls on. They don't have a matchmaking playlist though that lasts forever until all lives are gone. So the matches end after 30 minutes or until you complete the set, or if you somehow lose all lives, which did happen to me a few times. The first set is not that difficult, but some maps do make it pretty hard. They have recently added in a flood mode, which is a hit and miss. In Lost Platoon, even though it's cool that you have Marines fighting alongside with you, the fact that the map is so big and open and that the flood are highly reliant in getting close to you to deal damage, it gets very easy to take them out from afar. It does get a bit difficult, especially with the Warthog, since they can drain your health super fast. However, a Spartan laser should take out that threat right away. Also, the AI teammates just aren't that very smart. Indoor maps are much more intense though, since the flood can easily swarm you if you're not careful. Players have to make sure to destroy any bodies so the flood can't take them over again. What I really didn't like though was that the flood just spawn out of nowhere, so it's pretty easy to just camp where they're going to spawn and then toss a couple grenades. Outdoor maps, they could have had the flood drop from the sky like they would in the Halo 3 campaign, or have their spawns hidden in indoor maps. There was also some bugs while playing Flood Firefight. Some enemies wouldn't move and couldn't take any damage and would just stay there. And then a teammate and I were taking damage when literally nothing was shooting at us. Halo Reach MCC Firefight is mostly the same. It's still fun to play, it's also just still pretty easy for the most part. It is great though they brought these firefight modes back with MCC, since no one played the Xbox 360 versions anymore, and now they can't even do that at all since the servers are down. Firefight did not make a return in Halo 4, they instead came out with the cooperative mode, Spartan Ops. However, Firefight did make a return in Halo 5 Guardians. This mode though is very different from the previous two, as it borrows a lot of elements from the Warzone game mode and becomes Warzone Firefight. Instead of fighting off waves and waves of enemies, there are objectives the players must complete. Objectives could be defeating a certain amount of enemies, defending generators, defending bases, or defeating bosses. Also, gone are waves, rounds, and sets. Every single match is 5 rounds, and that's it. There are also no customization options for custom games, since Warzone Firefight can only be played in matchmaking. Halo 5's take on Firefight tends to force players to play very aggressively compared to the more defensive playstyles of Halo 3 ODST and Halo Reach's Firefight modes. While you do have the defending type objectives sometimes, you may only get one round of that each game, while the other rounds are eliminating enemies. There is a 5-minute time limit for each round, which doesn't seem that bad until you have to fight multiple bosses at once, and if you can't defeat them within those 5 minutes, you lose the match. Most games you'll get the tough enemies in rounds 4 or 5. If you do somehow get tough enemies in the earlier rounds, you may end up getting screwed. Tough enemies early on when you haven't leveled up in Rec means you won't have access to the stronger vehicles and weapons, so you're left with very weak equipment and won't be able to defeat the early bosses. However, by the time you get to rounds 4 or 5, you and your team will have leveled up enough to gain access to the stronger vehicles and weapons, and you're going to need them in order to win. The Rec system is almost a requirement to win Warzone Firefight. The bosses tend to be bullet sponges, and they take on so many bullets and explosives with their health bar just slowly going down. Most of the time, it's not even smart to waste rec points on weapons because those heavy weapons, while strong, will eventually run out of ammo. However, vehicles never run out of ammo. So you'll have games where by the very end, almost everyone is in vehicles trying to kill the boss enemies. There was even one match where the bosses were in these caves, and I was just trying to get my shots in, but I couldn't since all my teammates were in the way and I could barely see the bosses. It was honestly just kind of goofy, but it was still super hilarious to me. Some matches, the final bosses get swept pretty easily, then other matches you'll win with just a few seconds left, and then some matches you'll get destroyed. Honestly, I really love that chaotic side of it because sometimes you really just don't know what to expect. Some matches, the grunt mech boss will be out in the open and wipe the floor with everyone because you just don't have cover to get close to him, and then all these Prometheans spawn next to him, and so you just end up dying as soon as you get close to him because the Prometheans will keep spawning in. Other matches, the grunt mech boss would be in a closed environment and everyone can take cover from his weapons and kill him. Sometimes you have to fight multiple Warding Eternals in a single round. Other times, you'll have very powerful Promethean Knights that could insta-kill you. And then other times, you'll fight a Phantom with Banshees as support. However, it does get frustrating at times when you die and you're trying to figure out what to spawn back with. You don't have the option to see your teammates while waiting for the respawn timer. So you don't know if you should spawn with a ground vehicle or an air vehicle or with a power weapon. Also, the high reliance on the rec system may turn off a lot of players. They will only be focused on using one portion of the Halo sandbox, which is vehicles. Weapons like the BR, assault rifle, the DMR, they're fine for regular enemies but won't be enough to take down boss enemies. But you could argue that back when I was talking about Halo 3 ODST, I said it was still very fun to play, even though when we were trying to get the Vidmaster Challenge Indoor achievement in Lost Platoon, I said that we all had to get into vehicles in order to win, and I didn't really say that was bad, even though I'm saying it's bad for Halo 5 Guardians. Well, the thing is, the Warthog and Choppers in Halo 3 ODST are nothing compared to the vehicles you use in Halo 5. In Halo 5, you can use Scorpions, Wraiths, Mantises, Wasps, and Phaetons, and all the upgraded versions of them. The Warthog and Chopper in Halo 3 ODST aren't as durable and as strong as the vehicles you use in Warzone Firefight. And in Halo 3 ODST, once the Warthog blows up, you have to wait until the next round for it to respawn, and Choppers and Ghosts are only obtainable from the enemy, so you can never just spawn in with them. And also, many maps in Halo 3 ODST don't even feature vehicles, so you'll still have to rely on your weapons, grenades, and melee attacks. So yes, while vehicles help tremendously in Halo 3 ODST, they don't offer the same advantages as they do in Halo 5. To some people, seeing messy matches where vehicles are just on top of each other like this might seem ridiculous to them. I can understand that perspective since eventually it does become formulaic where you fight off regular enemies from rounds 1 to 3 and then get into vehicles from 4 to 5. I would recommend playing the higher difficulty setting because if you play on the easier setting it might become too repetitive and easy. The mode hasn't really changed at all since it was first released. There were new maps here and there, but the maps weren't designed for Firefight, they were designed for Warzone. Enemies just spawn in different areas of the map, and your team just has to travel to those points. While Halo 5's Firefight mode was unique compared to its predecessors, it just felt tacked on, like they just had to rush another mode out that contributed to the rec system so people could spend more money. It was fun at times, but the high reliance on vehicles just makes it not be able to compare well to Halo Reach or Halo 3 ODST's Firefight modes. And finally, we can talk about Halo Wars 2's Firefight modes. I must preface this though because my experience in real-time strategy games is very limited. I played a decent amount of Halo Wars 1 back in the day, however, my experience in Halo Wars 2 is very small. I played the story mode, but I didn't really try that much in multiplayer. I actually totally forgot there was a firefight mode in Halo Wars 2 until I started doing research for this video. So please keep that in mind when you hear my perspective on these modes, since it'll probably be very different from someone with a ton of RTS or Halo Wars experience. Halo Wars 2 has two firefight modes, Blitz Firefight and Terminus Firefight. They were both enjoyable modes, however, I don't see myself playing Blitz Firefight after this video, but I can totally see myself playing Terminus Firefight. Blitz Firefight uses the deck building system that was implemented into Halo Wars 2. Each card has different costs, and you can gain resources by traveling around through the small map in order to spawn more cards. I never really liked this deck building concept, since it's just obvious that it was put in place so people can use real world money to buy packs. However, I was able to open a lot of free packs through leveling up, so I was able to design some decks of my own. Now I'm gonna be honest, I didn't dive too deep into the intricacies of what deck builds are the best. I didn't watch any YouTube videos on strategy, so I always ended up between rounds 20 to 30. In Blitz Firefight, there are 3 zones that you must defend. If the enemy is in control of one, they'll slowly gain points, and once they reach a certain amount of points, you lose. Think of it like domination in Call of Duty, except you are just trying to hold out as long as possible against AI enemies. Most of my time though in Halo Wars 2 was spent in Terminus Firefight. I honestly missed out on a hidden gem of a firefight mode until now. Sadly, I did have to buy the DLC in order to play it, but if you're going to be playing the story DLC and then the firefight mode a lot with either yourself or with friends, I do think it's worth it. In Terminus Firefight, thankfully, there is no deck building system, so it's solely based on how you as a player can utilize your base, reinforcements, and leader powers, and not on how much extra money you put into the game. In this mode, there is a terminus that enemy forces are trying to destroy, and you and your teammates have to try your best in order to defend the terminus for as long as you can, up to 100 rounds. Ever since I started playing the mode, I had so much fun trying to figure out the best strategies in order to get to the higher rounds. Again, I'm not the best at this game, so I only made it to about round 35 on normal difficulty by myself, but trying different tactics and strategies again and again kept me hooked onto this mode. Using either UNSC, Covenant, or Banished factions provides their own strengths and weaknesses, and different leaders have their own abilities. The UNSC has Spartans that can hijack enemy vehicles and are incredibly strong on the field. The Covenant and Banished can have shield generators and cloaks for their bases, and their leaders can be deployed onto the field too. One of the most important things to do in Terminus Firefight is to expand your bases as much as you can. The enemy spawns decently far from the terminus, so it's best to stop the enemy early before getting to the terminus. Trying to expand your bases does get increasingly difficult because the enemies will start spawning in multiple places at once, so you have to be able to manage your units and place them in different routes, and be able to build turrets, walls, and traps in order to slow the enemy down. Being able to counter certain types of forces is also a major key. The 3 types of units are infantry, ground vehicles, and air vehicles. Certain units, like hunters, do really well against ground vehicles and are decent against infantry, but cannot attack air vehicles. Snipers for the UNSC destroy infantry from a distance, but can't really do much against any type of vehicle. Wolverines and Reapers counter mostly air vehicles, but are alright with infantry, but not so great against ground vehicles. Thus, you have to develop a certain strategy with having a combination of all different types of units. Wolverines and Scorpions I really liked because Wolverines handle the air vehicles and Scorpions do really well with ground vehicles and infantry. However, if the enemy spawns hunters, then that completely counters my strategy. So having snipers to take out the hunters would be good to also have on standby. While figuring out which units to spawn, you also have to be very good with managing your resources. Do you want to spend resources on a scarab or spend resources upgrading your hunters? Do you want to spend resources on building a new base or making more units first? You really have to stay on top of everything that is going on in the battlefield to make the most calculated decisions in order to make it farther and farther in the rounds. And doing that in co-op is so much fun because you're able to mix and match different strategies, combine the strengths of UNSC, Covenant, and Banished forces. As someone who doesn't really play strategy games that much, I will probably spend much more time in Terminus Firefight since there are a lot of possible tactics to be used and I'm still learning on what is best to do. However, I do have to mention that there is only one map for Blitz Firefight and then only one map for Terminus Firefight. This really hinders the replay value since while yes, enemy spawns are randomized so you won't be facing the same enemies in the same order every time, you'll still be playing on the same map every time. This may not be a huge deal if you had the option to choose where bases, turrets, or traps spawn, but no, they will always have to be spawned in the predetermined spots no matter what. So even with the variety of strategies you could do, it does eventually get limited since the map is always the same. If there were more maps, this issue does get mitigated a bit because there will be so much more map variety. However, with only one map, eventually it will get stale to a lot of players. Finally, we have to reach a verdict on what is the best firefight mode in the series. This is pretty difficult to do since Halo Wars 2 is involved, and I don't think it's really fair to compare a strategy game to a first-person shooter game. But we'll just do it anyway for the sake of this video. And again, this is just from my perspective, although I can see an argument for every other mode being the best. Maybe not Halo 5 Guardians though, but I could definitely see an argument for why Halo Reach or Halo Wars 2 has the best firefight mode. I would still say that Halo 3 ODST is the best firefight mode. In Halo Reach, yes, there are many customizable options, however, now in MCC, there are customizable options for Halo 3 ODST. Also, the base mode in Halo Reach in matchmaking is relatively easy in arcade. That could be fun for a lot of people, but personally for me, I just rather have a more difficult experience. In Halo 5 Guardians, the Warzone Firefight mode can be fun at times, but it requires investment into the rec system in order to beat the tougher rounds, whether it's using real-world money or in-game currency to buy these requisitions. Tougher rounds will almost always require most players to use vehicles, limiting the Halo sandbox. And finally, Halo Wars 2. This was difficult for me since I genuinely had so much fun in Terminus Firefight. However, Blitz Firefight doesn't have any base building, you can't build turrets with traps or walls, and there's no real sense of progression throughout the match. In Terminus Firefight, you start off with one base and gradually start building more bases while slowly upgrading your units and building an army. In Blitz Firefight, you can't really do any of that. You just spawn in an upgraded unit from your deck when you have enough resources. Halo 3 ODST, while doesn't fully commit to you being a normal human that's an ODST, you still have plenty of limitations compared to how Spartans are. So you still get that feeling of being pushed up against the wall while fighting an onslaught of enemies. You don't have armor abilities, you don't have an ammo crate for infinite ammo, and you don't have shields, so you don't feel too powerful. And to me, a mode where you have to fight repeatedly against an infinite amount of enemies, you shouldn't feel like an unstoppable force. At the end of the day, some of you may feel differently. Some may put Halo Wars as number one because they may prefer strategy games and may feel that the gameplay itself has more depth compared to the other modes. Others may put Halo Reach at number one because the amount of customization options outweigh the easy difficulty. And then some will rank Halo 5 Guardians at number one maybe because of its chaotic and random fun that they may have in the mode. Let me know what you all think though. What was your favorite firefight mode from the Halo series? Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you all next time.